Next, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what Congressman Posey and Congressman Murphy did with the Government Accountability Office. And he has his representative here, Mr. David Jackson. Congressman Bill Posey is the U.S. representative for Florida's 8th Congressional District. Representative Posey and Murphy, they submitted a request to the GAO to review the feasibility. While Congressman Posey had other obligations today, he asked his aide, Mr. David Johnson, to come and give us an update on that GAO request. So please help me welcome Mr. David Jackson. Thank you.
Indian River counties. I was going to go over the history of this project with you, but you all know that better than I do, the history and background of All Aboard Florida. So I'm going to talk to you about what you really want to hear is what Congressman Posey has done and his efforts working with Congressman Patrick Murphy, your congressman, on stopping All Aboard Florida. What our office has done is we've collected letters and resolutions in opposition to this project from local governments in our district and forwarded them to Secretary Anthony Fox of the Department of Transportation, and asking Secretary Fox to address the concerns posed by local government and the citizens in our district. There was a letter going around in Congress asking members of Congress to support this project, and Congressman Posey was actually asked to sign on to that letter. He did not sign on to that letter and will not sign on to such letter in the future. Right now, All Aboard Florida, as you know, has applied for a RIF fund with Federal Department of Transportation Improvement Infrastructure Fund. That we've all talked about the EIS regarding that fund. That has not been approved yet. The EIS has not been approved yet. I've looked at the EIS myself. There's a lot of information in there that's been omitted. It's really inadequate. It actually begs more questions than answers questions, which is truly unfortunate. And actually, there's some stuff in there that's not even true to begin with. If the funding question comes before Congress, Congress will oppose. He will vote no to fund All Aboard Florida. His track record on that has been basically, as Congressman Murphy has mentioned earlier, these rail projects do not make any money, and unfortunately the taxpayer ends up holding the bag and footing the bill for these projects. As Congressman Murphy has also done, Congressman Posey has written the General Accountability Office asking them to review this thing. A review was done of a project called Express West out in the western part of the United States, and the review, the analysis done by the GAO actually stopped that project. We're hoping they'll do the same thing with All Aboard Florida here in our state. Right now we're waiting for the GAO to make their decision to actually do the analysis, and of course when that happens we'll let you know, but you'll probably find out as soon as we do, so we're going to have to pass it on to you. But Casey, thank you for having this event. Thank you for inviting me. Keep doing what you're doing. As Congressman Murphy said, you know, there's power in numbers. Representative Lee also touched on that, power in numbers. So keep fighting the good fight. Thank you.
We appreciate you coming today. Ready to stop this train? Yes, we are. We are going to stop this train united. You know, I just want to make sure everybody. Jason, can you cue that up? Like that with this project, but you know, it all comes down, we like to say, stop the train. And Congressman Murphy talked about the productivity bonds, and we also just heard about the RIF loan, and I want to talk about those a little bit right now. First of all, the RIF loan is a taxpayer-backed loan. Somewhere in the 5, we've heard 1.5, it's right around that area. From the beginning, we have said this is a huge risk to taxpayers. We do not believe this project is feasible based on Amtrak, based on Tri-Rail losing so much money. How is this project going to be profitable? You know, I like to tell a little story. Has any of you heard about the Fun Train? It's a similar project ran in Florida back in 1990. They went from South Florida to Orlando. I think it left from Fort Lauderdale. They had a tiki bar and they had our dinner on the train, and they were going to attract all these tourists that are traveling between South Florida and Miami. Well, guess what? In 11 months, it went bankrupt. They shut the doors. Why? They couldn't get ridership. So now we have All Aboard Florida, 15 years later, 16 years later, trying the exact same thing. The only difference is they want to front this project with our money. I want to make this RIF loan has not been removed off the table whatsoever. That is still on the table. A few weeks ago, you probably all heard that they sold some junk bonds, $405 million worth. They were going to try and use some financing for the southern portion. These put at 12 to 12.75%. That's what the private market thought about it. Not only that, they needed to put collateral on these bonds to get them sold. A lien on the land, rights to the passenger track, the ability to run the business if the boat's wrong, and offer to purchase it at par if the project is abandoned before the opening deadline. So 12 to 12.75% with collateral, junk bonds at the most. I brought with me a couple votes because these were the people that purchased these bond buyers. It was only an equity play. We didn't spend a lot of time looking at it just because we saw it as an equity play, said one. And another said it's a bit of an equity story. They bought it for the equity. They don't believe this project is feasible. We've asked that from the start with All Aboard. How can this be feasible? As you may know, the application for the RIF loan has finally been released to the public, those that asked for it through the Freedom of Information request. We got our request, and most of it is blacked out. Most of the application, you don't see anything. However, there was one key sentence that I think all of you should be well aware, especially as we talk about activity bonds. All Aboard Florida had to submit an executive summary of the application. Their words, due to the project status as new development and the required construction period and operational ramp-up, traditional debt financing in the capital markets is not feasible. I'm going to repeat that because it's important. Traditional debt financing in the capital markets is not feasible. All Aboard Florida themselves do not think they can get financing in the private market. So now, because of all of us uniting and saying don't use our tax money with that RIF loan to front that project, we've sent them, and they have went out and they've applied for private activity bonds. They've applied to issue these bonds. They have not been given approval to issue these bonds at this point. Limitations of the private activity bonds, and this comes right off the Federal Department of Transportation's website. Allocation is a license to issue. On receipt of allocation, the project sponsor must still identify public sector issuers for private activity bonds and follow requirements for the issuance of private activity bonds. As you know, this week they just had a vote in Brevard and Miami-Dade County. They found a conduit, these bonds, but the Department of Transportation has not given the approval to do it yet. Secondly, they said depending on market demand, private activity bonds may be significantly more expensive as a form of financing than our traditional tax-exempt bonds or other alternatives. Keep that in mind. They just sold their junk bonds with collateral, and now they want us to believe they're going to get the private activity bonds and find private buyers for these bonds. There is no guarantee on these bonds. The last thing I want to point out on these bonds, we are still losing as taxpayers. The reason is it's a tax-free bond. You know, they're gonna, should they actually be able to sell their bonds and make money on them, they don't pay any taxes. They don't pay any income taxes on it. All of us have our we get our meager interest on it, and we have to pay taxes. With these bonds, they're all tax-free. All of us are working hard. They should have to pay taxes just like the rest of us. Tampa Bay Times calls it corporate welfare. So keep that in mind about the private activity bonds. We'll see if they even get the approval to issue them. But please, as everybody stated, let's unite. We need to comment on the impact, the draft environmental impact statement. It's so important to realize the RIF loan is still on the table, and frankly, the issue them, they're still bad for us, the taxpayers. So now,